Hello, heathens! I'm Megan Angus, and this is Spinning the Wheel podcast. In this weekly audio ritual, we explore the 8 seasons of the Witch's Wheel of the Year, and we discover how it is so much more than 8 Sabbats. We weirding witches time travel through holy days, festivals, and celestial events connecting our celebrations and magic to the past, present, and future. Our cackling fills the night as we take our turn gathering the wool, wielding the distaff, and spinning the wheel. Look who's back. Back again. Megan's back. Tell a friend. Hi, everybody. I know it has been a minute and a half. So welcome back. Welcome back to me and welcome back to you. It's nice to be here again, and it's nice to be doing this work again. Before we get into the stuff, let's get into the preamble stuff. Happy New Year by some calendars to everyone around the world who celebrates. We have passed over a variety of stuff in the last couple of months of taking some time off. So happy winter solstice, happy New Year to the Gregorian calendar people. All of that stuff. We are on this podcast, the royal we, whatever. We are on this podcast dedicated to liberation. And we have talked about this type of work from a bunch of different angles over the course of the last few years, or the last several years if you have been taking the Wheel of the Year live classes with me. I hope that it has been readily apparent that my very leftist political leanings are woven throughout this work. And I've had folks in the past encourage me to kind of like pick a cause and stick with it. And I appreciate that sentiment. Why I don't is because I see all of the world issues that are happening, whether it is genocide, whether it is the exploitation of natural resources, whether it is transphobia or homophobia, whether it is misogyny, like whatever, racism, whatever it is. To me, these are all symptoms of a disease that humans are inflicted with. And so the reason why I don't stick to one cause is because all of these causes are indicative of a deeper problem. And so also, our astrology is moving through the year and our wheel is constantly turning, and it's reminding us these issues don't just show up in one portion of our world. They are in fact showing up in all portions of our worlds. So, immediately swinging hard left, like immediately pulling the car over for a side note, a sidebar tangent. But this is why I'm saying that this work is dedicated to liberation, because that is an underlying element, an underlying unifying idea. So whether we are talking about people in Palestine or Congo or Sudan, whether we are talking about oppression from the past or the present, these things are all related to me, whether it's transphobia, homophobia, people not getting COVID support where they need it, etc., etc., etc. These are all connected to me. Okay. But I just wanted to address this because it's 2024, and we are moving in different ways in this new year. Or a better way for me to say that is that we are moving in more authentic ways. We are moving in ways that are more deeply centered to the human family, and we are moving in ways that are more deeply centered to the planet itself than maybe I have in the public eye in the past. So, that said, the tone of this podcast is going to change slightly. The focus, in my opinion, is no different. We are going to talk about lunar cycles, astrology, witchcraft, paganism, the history of pagan traditions and cultural elements. None of that is going away. Fixed stars, all that stuff. We're still going to be talking about all that stuff. We're going to be doing it in a slightly more refined way, um, and a little bit more purposeful of a way. One of the things that happened for me over this break is that I turned 50. And at 50, we experience our Chiron return. That is one of a few intense astrological transits that I have been experiencing. My Chiron is conjunct my ascendant, and that's right square in the middle of Aries. Um, and so I've had Pluto squaring my ascendant for some time, Chiron conjunct my ascendant, and conjunct natal Chiron. It's been, it's been super fun. I've had a great time. It's been super fantastic. And and without going too far into it, uh a lot of the work that I have made public, and I said this on Patreon, so if you read it on Patreon, here it is again. But a lot of the work that I have shared publicly, whether it is the classes I'm teaching or this podcast or even work with clients to an extent, has been about providing a lot of information and then sort of just letting you all do whatever you're going to do in your witchy process, in your witch work. And I'm just sort of a repository of information. Like, here's a bunch of data, here's a bunch of info for you to play around in. And on Patreon, I've shared a lot of my personal experimentation and my personal exploration into various avenues of magic. And without saying too much about that, my process around that is changing. And we'll just say, we're utilizing this Capricorn new moon that we're going to talk about here in the podcast in a minute, um, as a means of reorganizing what we're doing and how we're doing it. So, okay. I really want to give a massive, massive thank you to my patrons, folks who follow me on social media. I have had several people email me over the break to ask about me and make sure that I'm okay. Yes, I'm okay. And I've had a few people email me over the break to say thank you for taking the break and reminding them, oh, right, this is winter. We are meant to shut down. And we are experiencing unprecedented events on planet Earth right now. It is perfectly reasonable for us to stop and witness what is occurring and be affected by that. And that being affected may stop you in your tracks. It did for me. And that's not something that I've ever allowed myself to engage before. So I truly want to thank my patrons who made it possible for me to be arrested by what I was experiencing and allow that process to unfold. It's been very intense. And I'm glad that I was able to participate in this process. Okay. I have been in winter stillness. I am still in winter stillness. We all are. It has been a massive reset for me. And I am looking forward to the way that things have been reorganized within myself and within my um, view of the work that I am doing in community, whatever the hell it is that I am doing, whatever this is, whatever this thing is that I am. And I really don't know what to call it. Um, but yes, okay. Um, Anything else? We hit over 20,000 plays on the podcast over the break. What the fuck? That's insane. That's really, really wild. So let me throw an ad in right now. Please share this podcast with whoever, everyone. Like it. If you listen to it on a platform that allows you to give it a rating, please give it a rating. If you listen to this podcast on a platform that allows you to leave a comment or a review, please do so. It really helps the podcast. It really helps the algorithm. I love that stuff. And If you want to support the podcast even further, you can always send a donation, or you can subscribe to my Patreon. Folks at $1 and up get discount codes that they can use for readings with me and other stuff, workshops and things like that I'm offering, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So join Patreon if you think this is dope. Join Patreon. Partly because I don't run ads other than my own ad that I have recorded. I don't run ads on the podcast. And that is partly about uh not being recognized by the platforms that would pay me. And also it's about decommodifying going forward. We're just avoiding ads if at all possible. So thank you very much for supporting this work in whatever way that you do and can. What's coming up? We have currently my offers are 2024 year ahead readings. These are only available for patrons right now, and there is a limited number of them. If they don't sell out, they will go public on January 15th. The readings run from Aquarius season this year to Aquarius season next year. So the dates in the reading don't start basically until January 20th. So you won't be missing out on anything. So those are available. I also have evergreen readings available. These are evergreen solar transit wheel of the year natal chart reports. They are absolutely beautiful. They are intended to be something that you can hang up on the wall for each Sabbath season. These are also only available for patrons. I'll have more information about them soon, but they are up and available now. And eventually they will, full transparency, probably be cheaper with less stuff in them later on when I make them available to the public. Right now, they have a lot of stuff in there and it's kind of silly. So that's what's going on there. And again, you can use your patron discounts, yada, yada, yada. Okay. My books are currently open for patrons now and will be opening to the general public February 1st. Upcoming stuff, Tarot Circle is no more, or at least Tarot Circle is taking a nap. And are we still doing a monthly get together? We sure are. The new cycle of monthly get togethers for patrons is called Hecate's Supper Club. That's right, people. Pull up a chair, grab a cocktail or a mocktail, and let's sit down and bullshit about some witchcraft, shall we? Our first supper club is going to be January 14th at 1 p.m., so I guess that's more of a brunch, but whatever. And we will be going over the basics of lunar magic. We will be discussing the 8 phases of the moon and how to work with them, giving us a groundwork for working with the moon for the rest of the year. This class is only available to patrons, but it is available to everyone who is subscribed at $1 and up on Patreon. And the recording of that will be available to people who are subscribed at the Venus level and higher, and that's $9 a month. So if you can't make it to the class, you can download the recording and the slides later on. Our next Wheel of the Year class will be Imbolc. Yeah, it's already almost time for Imbolc because the wheel turns, people. And that is going to be January 23rd, 24th, or 25th. I haven't decided yet. I'll have information up about that soon. You can always subscribe to my YouTube channel to get alerts when new classes have been scheduled. You can also subscribe to my newsletter, my very irregular newsletter. Honestly, subbing to YouTube might be more consistent, to be honest. So sorry, people who have faithfully subscribed to the newsletter. I swear, I'm going to get it together one of these days. I swear. And last but not least, I am going to be running my multi-week Tarot Fundamentals workshop in the next couple of months. I will also have sign-up forms and information about all of that, etc., etc. Okay. That is all the thank yous, all the preamble, all of the stuff that's happening, all the stuff that's coming up. So let us get into this week's work. All right. Officially, this is 2024, January's new moon in Capricorn, lunar week 40 question mark by some lunar calendars, you know. Stuff. Time. It's a funny thing. So first off, let's go layer by layer and ground into the energy of this moment that we are experiencing. First and foremost, for those of us here in the Northern Hemisphere, we are in the midst of winter. And winter is a season dedicated to magic, spiritual work, philosophical work, and religious traditions, cultural elements, dedicated to the ideas of things like stillness, darkness, resetting, and dreaming. These are all of the things that we're doing as we are drifting through this darkest portion of the year. The sun has died and been reborn at winter solstice just a couple of weeks ago. In fact, not even like almost 2 weeks ago, not even quite. Um, and traditionally speaking, for most places in the Northern Hemisphere, everything kind of grinds to a halt at this time of year, or activities chill out significantly. Now, that's not everywhere. Cultures and communities that are very close to the equator may not really feel too much of a change in their cycle. And in fact, folks that are very near the equator and in very hot climates, wintertime is actually the time that a lot of those communities grow their main crops, where the rest of us in the Northern Hemisphere are chilling out and just like being in hibernation or drinking some spiked mead, or spiked, wassail, um, and, hanging out with friends and throwing snowballs at each other. Um, Hotter places are kicking into a work cycle at this time. So, interesting elements of how the wheel turns and works for different people in different places. But winter in general is a moment of reflection and stillness and quiet. And it really is about coming to a full stop and then beginning again slowly. Specifically, we are in Yule season, which of course, kicks off at winter solstice and rolls through to technically February 1st or 2nd, which is when we modern pagans celebrate Imbolc or Imolga, or Candlemas is another name for that holiday. I kind of think of these solar holidays as just sort of taking over the space of the sign that is overseeing them. And for winter solstice, that's Capricorn when we connect it to tropical astrology. Um, but in Yule season, this is where we and the sun die and are reborn. We sit in stillness and silence, um, or we sit in hibernation, and or we are just a little more mellow, a little more chill than we are compared to the rest of the year. Yule is not actually a long season. As I just mentioned, Imbolc is coming up here in just 3 weeks or so. Like what? So as much as there is this emphasis on stillness and darkness and being at peace and being at rest, I know that like freaks some people out a little bit, because it's like, oh my god, but my job, but my kids, but my car, but my dog, but my spouse, but my family, but my this, but my that. And yes, right, the modern world is still here and has to be attended to. But and so some of the things that maybe it feels like Yule asks of us in terms of that full stop and then resting and beginning again may seem impossible or untenable compared to the lifestyle that we are living. But this is why I'm kind of putting emphasis on the idea that Yule isn't that long. So, first off, you don't have a whole lot of time to do that work. We're going to start types of movement again here in just a minute. But also, it's not for months and months and months. It literally could be for a day or two in the midst of Yule season that you're just like, phone is turned off. I'm checked out. Like, I'm not like, we're done. Like, we're done. And I will see you in 48 hours. It doesn't have to be weeks and weeks and weeks. And also, we don't have weeks and weeks and weeks to do this. It's a very precious, special moment in the solar cycle. And so, in whatever ways, I encourage you to take advantage of this piece of the wheel to go quiet and go dark and allow yourself to reset. I cannot emphasize the benefits of this enough. Okay, so Yule is actually not a very long season, but it is also timeless because we are drifting in the dark. We are drifting in the void right now. So, time here, from a magical perspective and a spiritual perspective, is very present and also kind of has no meaning. The past, the present, and the future are all here with us in Yule. So, in whatever ways we can, we should chill out, slow down. It's important. Our big words and ideas that we are working with as we pass through Yule season: rebirth of the sun, renewal of the self, right? So there is a death and restart implicated in that idea. Implicated, implied, whatever. Kindling the sacred fire. This is another piece of the work that we can be doing at Yule. Is if we feel like we have drifted from our faith or our spiritual practices or our metaphysical practices or whatever, this is a great season to come back to that stuff. And truly, kind of all throughout winter and into spring, we have multiple opportunities here to like rekindle that fire for ourselves. Meditating on our gained experience and wisdom. This is huge. When we think about the phases or the iterations of the goddess that we pass through and work with and witness as we watch the wheel spin, or are spun by the wheel, depending on your perspective there. Winter is the crone. This is the crone goddess. And the crone is a living embodiment of accumulated wisdom and lived experience. And it's this deity and these types of deities that are the genetrix of the new sun that is popping out at winter solstice. So that new sun is born from old experiences and the past and the things that we've lived through and that our ancestors lived through and all of that stuff. So meditating on, I don't know, have a few things happened in the last 12 months? Have a few things happened in the last 2,000 years? This is a great time to think about that. And what wisdom have you earned through living through that stuff? Hibernating, just going dark. Like literally going to be quiet, not answering the phone, not dealing with you people. I'm checking the email next Monday, just being as chill as possible. And we know that when animals who hibernate, when they hibernate, sometimes they are knocked out and like fully asleep. Sometimes they're not literally asleep. They're sort of in like a hazy middle place that's kind of awake and kind of sleeping. And so they are, we could say, in a dream state and sort of drifting in that place. Very appropriate. And they are not entirely sacked out. They have very, very low activity. And that might be a place that feels accessible to you if you are a person who's relatively busy, has a lot of stuff going on in your life, and you're like, I can't literally bring everything to a full stop. But where can I chill out? Where can I put some things off for 2 months or a month? Where can I limit who I'm hanging out with a little bit, or how many events and activities I'm attending? Also, side note, we are having a massive COVID spike right now. I think I just read that this is the second largest COVID spike in the 4 years 3 years, 4 years of us dealing with the panini, the worldwide panini, as Jessica Lanyadoo likes to call it. Um, so, hey, wash your fucking hands, put on a mask, or stay home. How about that? How about stay the fuck home? It's not going to kill you. It's not going to kill you. And also, 'tis the season. This is what our ancestors would have been doing at this time, anyways. They would have been crafting. They would have been baking stuff. They would have been darning socks, watching the hail and the snowfall, and not hanging out with other people. Other stuff that we are working with for Yule season, we are witnessing the eternal goddess. We kind of already talked about that a little bit with recognizing, this aspect of the goddess as the crone. We are reaffirming our connection to spirit. And, I absolutely encourage you to do that. And I encourage you to do that in any way that instinctually feels correct for you. Maybe that's reading the very first books that you ever read on witchcraft and reflecting on what you know now versus what you knew then. Anything along those lines. Anything that feels like it's reconnecting you to the root of your spiritual practice. Excellent. And last but not least, affirming life in the face of death and chaos. And we have, plenty of that on Earth right now. And so this is a season that in some ways is even spookier than Samhain. Samhain, it has all the Halloween trappings, right? It's ooh, spooky, spooky. But in Yule season, we are literally walking in the death of the planet. We are witnessing the total shutdown of the natural world. We don't see animals, there's less insects, fungus and mold and stuff like that doesn't even grow because it's so cold. It's just like literal shutdown. And so where in just that regard, in what ways can you affirm life and vitality? You can dance, you can sing, you can bake food, you can share it with your neighbors, you can call up an old friend and have a chat while you drink some apple cider. Like, just remembering I am alive, I'm still alive, and let's do this one more time, right? Grounding that into the reality of the physical world that we're living in, we are surrounded by an exceptional amount of death and chaos and disorder right now. There are incredibly malevolent forces walking the earth currently. And in what ways can we affirm our life and vitality itself, the spirit of vitality on the world stage? In what ways does it feel respectful to do that? In what ways does it feel correct to do that? And I think that work is hard. So I want to address that. Just saying, "Hey, cheer up guys. I know it's a genocide, but yeah, whatever, let's go to Disneyland." That feels very, very hollow and weird for a lot of the folks that I've been talking with. I'm lucky to be surrounded by a lot of people, my clients included, my patrons included. Not everybody, you know who you are, but most of us seem to kind of be on the same page of like, this is not business as usual. This is fully wrong, and I'm affected by it. I cannot just go about my life like nothing is happening. So again, how do we affirm livelihood in the face of this stuff in a way that's respectful but insistent? And tap into your values here. Tap into your core elements and your childhood memories of what happiness felt like. Maybe that was just being with your favorite loved one. Maybe that was something as simple as like going to your favorite park, right? And I do not want to speak for people who are facing genocide. I do not want to speak for people who are at the receiving end of the atrocities that are happening on the planet right now. But there is something to living for those who cannot, and feeling joy and experiencing joy for those who cannot right now, and keeping those people in our hearts as we do so. Are you having a party? Say something about what's happening in the world before the party starts. It doesn't have to be long. It could be 5 minutes, but it's enough of an acknowledgement that all of us here are saying it's not business as usual and everything fucking feels weird. And at the same time, there has to be dancing at the revolution, right? We are going to have bread and roses. We have to. So this is also a season to reflect on, how do I do that? How do I summon up that kind of joy, that vitality in the face of this really intense chaos? Yeah, see, the patriarchy, even now. Here's the kyriarchy getting their 5 seconds into the podcast. All right. Did you get that out of your system, Dad? Cool. Let's move on. Okay. Now, the as I said before, the sign that oversees Yule season is Capricorn. Capricorn is a cardinal earth sign. Cardinal signs want to get stuff started. So it's very appropriate that we have Capricorn at the beginning of our year. And earth signs are very concerned with embodying things and making things real in the physical world. Earth signs are like, I want to see the proof. I want to see the material goods. I want to see the effects of my work. I want to see the product of my efforts. Let's go. Let me see it. Let me be it too. I'm not just going to think about it. I'm not just going to feel about it. I'm not just going to be passionate about it or identify with it. I'm going to embody it. And all of us will be passing through Capricorn. So all of us get to work with this energy as we see fit. Capricorn is ruled by the planet Saturn. And as much as Capricorn is about getting stuff started, Saturn is also a planet deeply connected to the past and deeply connected to some of the ideas that we've already mentioned, like the accumulation of wisdom. Time is something that Saturn oversees, the passage of time and the effects of time. And Saturn oversees building and maintaining structures, containers, and borders. And structures, containers, and borders are something that Capricorn oversees, and again, kind of speaks to some of the stuff that we are experiencing in the physical world. Who gets to control the borders? Who gets to be inside the container and who is outside of the container? And what does the container look like? And who gets to decide that when it comes to land and land rights and things like that, right? It's up in our face sometimes, the astrology and the symbolism. It is up in our face. And so here Capricorn is like, let me bring that right to your dinner table. And you can just have that right directly in your face. There you go. So also, we are passing through the Celtic tree month of birch. Birch is a magical and medicinal tree. Look it up. I was blown away by the number of medicines that have birch or birch bark or birch sap or birch leaves. I was just like, whoa, dog, like pop off, homie. What the heck? Birch tree putting in the work. It represents the eternal silvery goddess, and the silver goddess and the silver castle of the goddess and all of that stuff is symbolism that we deeply work with at winter solstice. It also represents rebirth, new beginnings, and growth. Again, very appropriate for our winter solstice jams. And as much as it is connected to winter solstice and deep winter, interestingly enough, the leaves of birch trees are used as decorations and for protection at midsummer. And birch trees often stand as maypoles in Beltane and midsummer celebrations. So again, we have another symbol here that kind of connects the past to the present to the future. A birch tree that we are celebrating at winter, but that we are going to work with at the end of spring and the beginning of summer. Interesting stuff. Okay, so that brings us to the new moon in Capricorn. So let's break that down. We know that we are in winter. We know that we are in Yule season. We know that we are in the sign of Capricorn, and we know that we are in the tree month of Birch. So this is our new moon in Capricorn. And our new moons are seeds, they are starts, they are initiations, they are gateways for us to walk through, they are reset moments, they are opportunities for us to begin or initiate or reconnect with, come back around to, also is something that I think is appropriate to say about new moons. Because a lot of us are old. Hi. Many of us have been here for a minute. And the cycles and the work that new moons suggest for us oftentimes are not new topics for us. They're things that we've been working on for a long time. And so when we have a new moon in a sign and it's saying, like, hey, what about your long term trajectory and your long term goals, which is something that Capricorn is concerned with? Um, is this the very first time that you've ever thought about that stuff? No, obviously not. It's a time to come back to that and initiate that conversation again for yourself and to say, now what would I like to start in that conversation, or restart in that conversation? So, new moons are an opportunity for us to begin or to begin again, connect or reconnect, initiate, reinitiate, whatever it is that we're doing. But this Capricorn new moon is special, in my opinion, because this is the last Capricorn new moon that we are going to have with Pluto in Capricorn. Next year, when we have our next new moon in Capricorn, Pluto will have officially moved into the next sign, Aquarius. So for me, this is another moment connecting the past to the present to the future. The first thing that I want to encourage for you with this new moon is to think of this as a time to consider all that we have experienced and lived through since 2008, when Pluto entered Capricorn. Remember, us Americans who are listening to this, this was our housing crisis at the initiation of that transit. And this time period has been our country's Pluto return. You can kind of look around at the state of things on Earth and how much America is connected to the state of things around the planet to get a sense of what a Pluto return might be bringing up for for these massive structures and systems. Pluto takes 250 years to go around the chart. So at this time, the genetic modifying nanobots haven't quite entered the conversation just yet. So at this time, humans don't live long enough to have a Pluto return. So we see Pluto returns in institutions, in the histories of countries and civilizations, and massive concepts and structures that are larger than an individual lifetime. But hey, what an amazing demonstration we're having right now. Like, okay, we've got the point. You can pull back. Thanks, Pluto. Relax. So this new moon, in my opinion, is first and foremost asking us to look back over the last, 15 years, 14, 15 years, and to think about what all had happened and where are we today, as, the onion is peeled back and things are revealed. This moon is pulling focus to all of the Plutonian and Capricornian elements that we may struggle with, especially the shadow sides of those things, the not evolved, the not progressive stuff, the not healthy, even we could say, stuff about Pluto and Capricorn. Pluto composts, that's its job. It comes through and it rolls into a situation and is like, this thing, here's where the poison is, or this thing, here's where it needs to be broken down, or this thing here, let's get down to the foundation and the root of it. And then composting whatever is there, right? I've heard some astrologers use the word corrosion, or Pluto, saying that Pluto corrodes, and I think that's a cool way of thinking about it. But for me, I prefer the word composting, because when something is corroded, it disintegrates and it becomes nothing. And when things are composted, they also disintegrate, but they become the fodder for whatever is coming next. And none of our astrology is happening inside of a bubble. None of the world events that we are experiencing are happening in their own little vacuum. Everything is connected, right? The wheel turns. And so I'm thinking about Pluto rolling through and composting things and breaking down old stuff, whether it's ready to be broken down or not, and also remembering that traces of that stuff is still here in the mix. We have not eradicated, just because Pluto leaves Capricorn doesn't mean capitalism is going to end at the end of 2024. It's not going to be that easy. And so, it's still here. But also, it may have been broken down into a much more useful form for growing the things that we would like to be seeing in the future. So, Pluto composts. Capricorn relates to systems and containers and boundaries, as I previously said. So, in my opinion, for our new moon in Capricorn, we need to take a long look at all that has accumulated here, and all that is breaking down, and all that should be broken down, with an eye for what could be grown in the future. For example, just, I don't know, off the top of my head, let's say we wanted to live in a peaceful, harmonious world. I know, wild. Wouldn't it make sense to stop supporting systems of war, right? If this is the future that I want to build, why would I support systems that are antithetical to that future? So that's where we are right here. Um, if I want to have a healthy future, why am I going to support systems or feed into systems or allow systems to continue that promote unhealthy futures? That's literally what's up for this moon. So this moon is asking us to call in that vision of what is the container that I need for the future that I want. And I'm going to say that again in a minute. but in the moment also, even though it is a new moon, what do we need to initiate? What do we need to start? What do we need to begin as we think back on all that has happened since 2008? This moon is also square the nodes. So this entire lunar cycle might stir up really big feelings and a sense of tension around the conflict between pursuing our destiny and not rocking the boat, which will be very hard not to do because this moon is also trine Uranus, who is our, zodiacal karate chop, right? The zodiacal table flipper, Uranus. Our inner progressive scientist looking outwards towards the future is definitely encouraging us to break away from the pack and shake things up. But we have to find a way to make these types of actions sustainable and realistic for the long-term trajectory of where we think we want to go. There's a difference between doing super radical political action that drains you and drains your bank account and exhausts you. And then 3 months in, you're like, I'm done with that. I can't do it anymore. It's totally unsustainable. Versus waking up and making a phone call to your representative every day, right? It's just a phone call. You're probably only going to leave a voicemail. Nobody's going to pick up because, whatever. But it has to be recorded. They can't just delete the voicemail. They have to record it. Somebody's going to listen to it somewhere. Right? Much more sustainable for the long term. I'm making a phone call every single day. And then I go about my business. I'm going to get up and go pee and do the dishes and make some breakfast. That thing. Shifting the way that we look at this type of stuff. I want to say a little bit more about the nodes being a part of this new moon because, as we've been talking about for the last year and a half, the North Node is in Aries and the South Node is in Libra. And what that work has been asking of us, what that transit has been asking of us to look at is, where are we honoring our individuality, and where are we letting go of people pleasing and compromise that's not healthy for us. But pushing into that with this new moon in particular, there could be issues around ambition and powerlessness, inclusion and exclusion, fairness and privilege, and examining where we truly have agency and what is not worth fighting over or what is worth fighting over. Aries wants to believe that it can do everything itself. And this is work that we cannot do alone. We have to do it as a collective. Every one of us is a tiny drop in a bucket, and eventually that bucket is overflowing, and eventually it is a tsunami. The South Node in Libra wants to compromise and not rock the boat forever. Hashtag forever. And that's also not realistic, and it's not healthy. We do have to rock the boat sometimes. We do have to say no to people sometimes. We do have to go our own way sometimes and break up the pack. And these types of topics, when we're talking about money, we're talking about personal security, we're talking about material goods and initiating our long-term goals and professionalism, quote unquote, and success, quote unquote. There can be a lot of pressure to err on the side of being diplomatic, don't rock the boat, just say what you know is going to be socially acceptable and all of that stuff. And the nodes squaring this moon are like, that pressure is really, really here. And also, is that really the healthiest choice? Is that really the route you want to go? Again, being that this is a new moon, this is an opportunity for us to start something new. So, coming back to this, on this new moon, if you do any ritual work or journaling work for this new moon, I'm going to give you some suggestions at the end. I want you to think about what new systems you want to support, what new sustainable habits you want to instill that support you and that support the world that you want to see and supports the world that you would want to hand off to the next generations. Just that, no pressure, that's all. Just that. That's the stuff that I think is going to be the most beneficial for us to focus on in this new moon process. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Because we are just restarting the podcast, we are not going to lay it on super hardcore thick this week. That's your information for the new moon. I'm going to mention one holy day or festival for us to think about and do some study on, and then we're going to get right into our witches work, and that's going to be it for the week. I know. Not 2.5 hours. What the hell? This is me pacing myself. A round of applause. Thank you. A pat on the back, please. Thank you very much. This is me not overwhelming myself day one and being true to the resetting and the shifting that I have been experiencing over these last few months, and also calling myself out on my unhealthy people-pleasing tendencies. I'll just leave it at that. So, this isn't the Megan confessional hour, but God bless if it was. Okay. So our festival to focus on for this week, in my opinion, is from our Norse friends and ancestors, Thorablat or Thoriblat. Thorablat is an Icelandic midwinter festival named for the month of Thori, which is the first month of the calendar year after the winter solstice. And the word, so it connects to Tori, and then blot, blot, literally means blood, and so it meant some kind of a sacrifice, some kind of an offering. The more I research that word blot, the more I find that, sure, yes, it was literal sacrifices sometimes, but plenty of time there was just an official event that was taking place on a blot. And it didn't have to be an animal sacrifice necessarily. It could have been a habit that was given up, or a giant bundle of grain that was offered, or what have you. So it really is more of just like a moment of offering, a moment of witnessing that this is happening. Um, so I just picked up finally an incredible book that I think is super duper dope. It is now in the bibliography for all of the Wheel of the Year handbooks that we pass out throughout the year. And this is the Nordic Animist Year by Rune Rasmussen, Rune Jarno Rasmussen. This guy is amazing. This guy is doing the work out there. He is really pushing to decolonize Nordic practices and recognizing where there is so much more in the practice than what you might think was there initially. And a big part of that is just recognizing the dimensions of the Nordic traditions and the Nordic um, practices and elements of the culture that have been suppressed by the Christianizing of those communities and cultures. Um, just super, super dope, super cool stuff. So, Thoriblat is a festival that you will find on some modern pagan calendars. And what it connects to really is the new moon that kicks off the month of Tori. And some people say the month of Tori just starts at January 1st. Other people say that Tori started about what we would think of as the middle of January. And other people say that Tori started at the new moon, which was the second new moon after the winter solstice, or the first new moon after the winter solstice. So I'm going to read a little bit from the Nordic Animist Year about this moon and about this festival. So, in modern and ancient Nordic tradition, this new moon was called the New King. This is the first new moon after winter solstice. Um, the New King is the first new moon after winter solstice. This date is particularly important to people who count the year by lunar months. Oh, hey, that's us. Because it defines the lunar year for some groups. If it is closer than 11 days to the winter solstice, then a leap month has to be added. And in fact, this new moon is happening on the 11th. And so it is farther out, but our lunar pattern does switch halfway through the year. So that may be connected to this. So, a prayer or a song that would be sung for this new moon: welcome, new king, welcome, Lord, with grain and with seed, with sun and with warmth, with pork and lard, and good beer in harvest. Feed the cow in the stall, give oat to the goose, the hogs in the forest, the threshers in the barn, the fish in the river, feed the cow in the stall. Sounds good. Sounds like everybody's getting taken care of in this new moon in Capricorn. But think about that. Capricorn, right? It's about the earth plane, it's about the physical and material world. And what is all of this focusing on is material goods, right? And these material systems that have to be working correctly at this time of year, or people are going to starve and die. So this calendar, or excuse me, this month is connected to political stuff within Icelandic history, etc., etc. But there have also been sexual aspects to this day. The Danes used to pray for milk in our bucket and to our women. Hello. And to our women, a good, healthy man. And Icelanders knew that a wife should take good care of her husband on this day. You can define that as you will. A strange ritual from southern Sweden has boys and girls all wearing dresses, dancing in a circle and singing the song. We curtsy for the new moon. We give offerings because Doesn't say why. We dance around, around, and all around. Um, and during this dance, they curtsy and they spin around and around, and they throw salt and ashes over their shoulders and all of this good stuff. In fact, in Iceland, it was the duty of the man of the house to receive Thori by performing the following strange ritual. He would pull down his trousers and let them remain hanging by a leg as he hopped around on one leg around the house. Because paganism, right? Of course. And so this is the last thing that Rune has to say about this moon in his book. The new moon was important because this opening day of the moon represents what was to come. The opening of the life cycle of the moon in a given year was somehow iconized in this day as if this particular new moon comprised all the new moons of the year. I really love that idea. And thereby held the fortune of the whole year. So, boy, doesn't that also connect us past, present, and future, right? As we have said multiple times in this podcast. And moreover, a bit of a gravity to this moon of like, what are we doing going forward? What are we refusing to carry forward? And also, what is the container that I need to build that will hold the future that I want? That stuff. This is why it's called for offerings and prayers. There are sexually ambiguous aspects to this new moon. It's called the new king, but women take omens from their future spouses and little boys wear girls' dresses. The erotic and transgender element of the ritual on this important day is a testament to the sexual aspects of the cyclicity of the year. Thank you, Rune Rasmussen, from the book The Nordic Animist Year. I cannot recommend it highly enough. So that's our festival that I'm pulling focus to for us to think about this week. We have no fixed stars of note transiting this week, so we're not going to talk about that. But here, I think I've given you a good pile of stuff to think about with this new moon, and I don't want to overwhelm you with it because I want you to stay nice and focused in the center of the symbolism. We have had a death and a restart. We are in a moment of stillness, but eventually, and sooner than it feels like, sooner than we think, the action is going to start to pick up. The momentum and the building is going to start to happen. So in this moment of stillness, let us get extremely clear on what we refuse to carry forward and what we have to begin to build, to summon in and give a place for, an altar even, if you will, for the future that we truly want for ourselves, our communities, and the future that we hope to be passing off to future generations. Okay. To help you focus on this new moon and work with these ideas, our tarot card that I'm going to suggest for you is the Devil. Because why not? Because why? Well, in traditional astrology, tarot, whatnottery, the Devil card represents Capricorn. This is our new moon in Capricorn. So here is exactly the time that we want to work with this card. And at the root of the Devil card, the meaning and the symbolism that we are working with is, can you rise to the challenge? And can you parent yourself in rising to the challenge? Can you create the structures that you need to have in your life to create the container for the world that you want and for the life that you want, right? It's one thing to sit on the couch and say, "Oh wow, I've got all these great ideas for the person who I would like to be and the life that I would like to be living." But are you doing anything about it? And again, are you creating the container? And as I said just a few moments ago, it kind of came to me in the midst of recording this. Are you making your life an altar to receive the future that you say that you want? Are you really preparing a place for it? That is another way that we can envision the work that we could be doing at this time of year. So the Devil oversees that. The Devil card points to all of the places where we're talking out of one side of our face, but we are doing something very different in the real world, and those things are not in harmony. And the devil is like, I'm just going to keep throwing temptations and problems and stupid little bullshit in your way that are going to distract you, as long as you are willing to be distracted. The moment that you want to get focused and get sharp about things, I will happily help you build the structure, build the architecture, build the container, whenever you want to do that. Otherwise, yeah, let's continue to goof off. Who cares, right? What does it matter? So, a really great, helpful card to work with. Other cards that you could work with for this new moon if you want to: the World card, which connects us to the planet Saturn, which is the ruling planet of Capricorn. And you could also work with the 2, 3, and 4 of Pentacles. They are astrologically aligned with the sign of Capricorn as well. Um, and they certainly talk about building things and pulling in the structure and really thinking about, what am I putting my energy into and what's the feedback that I'm getting from the systems I'm pouring my energies into. Let me think about that. Okay. Stones that we can work with for this Capricorn new moon: smoky quartz, black tourmaline, and garnet. Smoky quartz is a very grounding stone and protective. And I find that it has a very calm, but not stern, but maybe stoic is the right word here. It's like certain. That's the word I think I want for smoky quartz. It has a certainty about it that's like, no, 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 it's going to be fine. We're going to figure this out. And you over there, you're not going to mess this up. Please stand back. It's a protective stone as well. Black tourmaline is also a very protective stone and really good at grounding. If in this work you find that you are kind of getting carried away with the horrors of the world and the terrible things that are happening on planet Earth, black tourmaline can help bring you back down into the here and now and into your body. I personally find that when I work with black tourmaline, I realize that I'm hungry, or I realize that I need to stretch, or I realize I need to go take a poop. It really is like, don't worry about that other stuff. Let's just be in the physical moment right here and right now. So very helpful for that. And garnet is also a body oriented, physical world oriented stone. It connects us to our root chakra for folks that are working with the chakra system. But it's also sort of like a dark fire. It's like a fire in the darkness. If you look at a garnet stone, it has a red glitter to it that's a significantly darker red than like a ruby, which is almost like a pink red and very bright and flashy. Garnet is like this secret fire that's burbling in the dark. And I find it to be very sexy, very vitality enforcing, and still kind of subtle about how it goes about doing that stuff. That's just my personal experiences with those crystals. So there may be, as I always say, listen to your intuition. Um, and, if you're particularly drawn to working with something that I didn't list here, do that. Like, pay attention to that and journal it. Put it in your book of shadows, journal that. Pay attention to that. Okay. For our witches work, if you again are designing like a new moon ritual for yourself, for this Capricorn new moon, our witches work really is focused on thinking about and initiating the construction of structures needed to contain the future. And some of that might be what needs to get broken down, what has accumulated over the last 15 years that is literally in my way, is impeding my progress as I go forward, or is just totally unrelated to what I'm trying to do going forward, and I simply don't need it anymore. That stuff. That's where I'm really encouraging our focus. And last but not least, our lunar body work and our plant body work. I couldn't leave these out. I couldn't leave these behind. This had to come with us into the new cycle and the new form of this podcast. For our lunar body work on a new moon in Capricorn, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, and preparing for actions the bones, the hair, the nails, the teeth. So, yes, the mani-pedi is a holy act this week, 100%. Yes, getting the haircut, getting the hair styling, getting the hair dyed, 100%. Yes, absolutely. Um, but any kind of and as I always say, I am not a doctor of the human corpus. I am a doctor of the cauldron. I am a doctor of the distaff. So check in with your trusted health advisor before incorporating any of this information. And of course, you can always work with the metaphor. And what are the bones but the architecture of the body, right? What is the skin but the container of the body? I don't think I put skin on here, but yeah, skin is definitely here. Um, right. So, uh, in what ways can we care for those container systems of ourselves in preparation for whatever the work is that we're calling in the course of 2024? For our plant body work, it's a new moon. Spin your plants a quarter of a turn if you have not spun them in a while to encourage new growth. The sunlight is very short for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere at this time of year, so your plants might really start leaning in one direction or the other. And this is a great time to remember to spin them so that they have healthy growth and, grow in a good shape. Um, Diasil, sunwise, clockwise is the direction that you want to spin your plants. This is also a great time for, of course, maintaining our containers, our borders, our fences, our beds, our structures. Maybe you have something in your house that needs to be replanted because it's getting too big for the pot, or maybe the pot is starting to break. If you're a person that's lucky enough to have outdoor space where you grow stuff, take a look at it. Does anything need to be broken down or repaired? Or are you ready to take apart this thing to clear out an area and start a new project in the coming months? This is a great moon. Even if you just are sketching out the blueprint, this is a great moon for that kind of work. And again, the metaphor applies. What else can we do with this moon for our plant friends? We can plant and attend to our roots and our tubers. We can be harvesting seeds and roots to replant. This is a great moon for fertilizing if you haven't fed your plants in a while. Obviously, follow the directions on your fertilizer. This is a great moon for grafting and taking cuttings. Um, this is a great moon for layering and layering our ground covers, um, and a great moon for planting any of our wintertime crops that are going to be sustaining us for the next 3 months, 4 months or so before the springtime crops kick off and do their wacky stuff. Okay, that's it, my friends. That's the whole podcast for this week. That's all I want us to think about. That's not all I want us to think about. That's all I'm going to talk about in this podcast. Uh, and I've said it. This week is focused on creating the container that could hold the future that you actually want for yourself and the future that you would want to pass off to future generations. That's our work this week in ways that are actually sustainable for our way of life. So that requires some authenticity, that requires some realness, humility, and courage, and conviction, and commitment. Just that. That's all. That's all we're doing. Again, I want to thank everybody so much for hanging out and being still with me in the dark. I hope that the stillness of winter is healing and rectifying for you, whomever is listening to this. And here we go into 2024. I hope that we get the year that we need. And I hope that we can be faithful scientists as we move into this next iteration of life on Earth. Blessed be witches.